This is a video I never thought I would make. When we left 3 years ago to travel around Southeast Asia full time as a family, I never thought I'd be making this video, but here we are. No one can predict the future. We are heading back to Australia permanently. We are packing our bags and moving from Penang, where we live at the moment, and we're heading back to Australia. Now, I was very hesitant to make this video because I know in the comments there's going to be a huge amount of you that are going to go, you failed, you shouldn't come back because you hate Australia. I can already see the comments. And I really battled with the idea of making this video because, quite frankly, I don't want to have to deal with that. But I'm making this video because there is a lot of you that have been following along on our journey and genuinely want to know the reasons we're going back. And we also know that our adventures have inspired others to do the same thing, which is traveling around as a family and spending more time as a family. So I'd imagine the main thing you want to know is why we're heading back to Australia if we enjoy being in Southeast Asia so much. And I want to qualify, we really do enjoy living here in Southeast Asia. It's beautiful. Look at this behind us. This quality of life is very difficult to attain in Australia given the current cost of living. But I want to share a bit of my personal story with you. So this is my mum. My mum's name is Gloria, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her mid-60s. Haven't really shared it with many people just because I haven't seen a need to. But she is now 73 and she's in the late stages of her dementia. And in the last 3 years since we've been traveling, everything's been okay. But now she's getting to the point where she's going to need palliative care soon. She's really in the late stages. And quite frankly, I just want to spend time with my mum, and I want my boys to spend more time with my mum. Notwithstanding, she's had a couple of issues at the home she's in as well, and they've had to move her to a higher care unit. But I felt incredibly guilty being over here, traveling around and seeing the world and spending time with my family, knowing that my mum is sitting there alone. My parents divorced when I was very young, and me and my sister are the only people my mum have left. My sister lives 1,400 kilometers away, and I am several thousand kilometers away. So I always felt guilty about putting ourselves first and knowing that my mum is going through something that she really needs other people around her to make it feel better. And it's just time to go and be with her. Now, this wasn't a decision that was made lightly. My wife and I discussed it at length, and we really decided that this was the time. There's other reasons as well, which I'll go through in a second, but that's the main reason. The next reason is a little bit more practical in nature. I don't know where the confusion came in the videos that I made, but people have this perception that I hate Australia. And I don't necessarily know why that is. I have never said I've hated Australia in any of my videos. Actually, it's the opposite. I talk about how much I love Australia in several of my videos, and I talk about the reasons we left were nothing to do with Australia as a country. It was mainly the cost of living in Australia and how it's run. Like I said, I served in the military for almost a decade. You don't do that if you don't love the country you're from. But I really dislike how it's run, and I'm very vocal about that. So yeah, I don't hate Australia at all. I just hate how it's being run. And I think I'm not in the minority there, to be completely honest. But at some point, it got misconstrued that I hate Australia. This is a reflection of how much we love Australia. We miss Australia. As much as we have everything we need here in Southeast Asia, it's not Australia. And it's very hard to explain that if you haven't lived outside of Australia for a while. I suppose one of the biggest takeaways we've gotten from traveling around Southeast Asia is that we got to see the beauty of the country again, right? When you're living in Australia and you're just like going through the motions of surviving in the country, you forget how beautiful Australia actually is. You forget how nice Australia actually is as a country. But we've had enough time away from Australia to be able to experience that again. And we experienced that again when we went back to Australia in February. We went back to our home, which is Mandurah in Western Australia. And we just seen things and noticed things that we never really noticed when we were living there last time. And I never thought when we started traveling that would be one of the reasons we wanted to come back, is because we missed Australia. At the time when we left, I had no intention of coming back. I really was done with Australia for a while. And I said, oh, we could just live in Southeast Asia and it'd be cheaper and, we'll have a better quality of life, which has actually been true, to be completely honest. That part is 100% better than Australia. The cost of living here is way, way more affordable. And the quality of life, given how much you spend, is better bang for buck wise. But it's still not Australia. It's still not our home. And maybe it took us traveling 3 years for us to really appreciate Australia and the country we're from. And I never thought that would be the biggest takeaway from our trip, but clearly it is. One of the objectives of traveling unintentionally was to fall back in love with Australia. Maybe that was part of the whole reason we left in the first place, is we'd fallen out of love with the country. And it just took us a while to realize that we actually really do love Australia, and we love so many elements of it that the pros outweigh the cons. Whereas when we were battling and struggling back in Australia, the cons outweighed the pros. And like everywhere in the world, Southeast Asia has its pros and cons as well. And I just want to make you aware that you will get to the point where you realize that it's not your home. I always thought my home is wherever the Pauline and the kids are. I honestly always thought that. But actually, it's more than that. And for better or worse, Australia is our home. Australia is, for all of the cons that I've spoken about in the past, the cost of living, the way it's run, like the over-governance, it's still one of the nicest places in the world to live. And you can't dispute that. And maybe, like I said, maybe it took coming over here and spending some time overseas, but not from a holiday perspective, but like living here, to really appreciate those pros. And who knows, in a year, or when mum's seen her course, as they say, maybe we'll travel again. I don't know. But for now, we're coming back to Australia, changed as people. Coming back, we've already made the decision that we're going to see more of Australia. We've already made the decision that we're not going to buy as much as what we had, because we just don't need it. For the last 3 years, we've been living out of 4 suitcases. We've already made the decision that we don't need stuff to be happy. We just need each other, and we're just taking that into Australia. And luckily, we don't have to look for jobs. We don't have to do any of that. We can just continue what we're doing with the digital marketing agency and set up my laptop in Australia, and we're good to go. And that's removed a lot of the stress, obviously, of going back. But you know what? That's super interesting. Maybe that's why everyone needs to travel. I talk about the reasons people need to travel and travel full-time as a family. Maybe people need to travel overseas and live overseas to appreciate how good their home is. Maybe that was the whole thing. Maybe that was the reason to travel, not the cost of living, not the governance, the way Australians governed or anything like that. Maybe it's just to get away, recalibrate, recenter, and then be able to fall back in love with the country you're from. Maybe that's what it is. What does that mean for this channel though? We're still going to be making videos. We're going to be talking about traveling. We've learned a lot about traveling in the last 3 years, so we're still going to be talking about traveling. More practical things though. We're also going to be taking you on a few adventures within Australia. So one of the things I want to do when we get back is I want to build a camper trailer from scratch. So I'm going to be taking you along for that journey, taking you along on little camping trips, things like that. And also just talking about the differences between Australia and Southeast Asia that we've noticed, because I think people are very interested in that. And we have a unique perspective because we've spent time in both for an extended period of time. So yeah, I just wanted to share that because I just didn't want you to wake up one morning and see a video magically we're in Australia and there's no explanation on why. As much as I know I'm going to cop some flack from the people that didn't watch this video all the way through, it's important for those people who have been following along on the journey and are inspired by what we're doing to get an understanding on why we're going back. And maybe that's a positive thing. Now that I think about it, as I'm making this video, maybe that's a positive thing because I was quite depressed about this for a little bit. You know, I was kind of umming and ahhing whether we do it. But maybe the positive to come out of this is that we are actually genuinely excited about going back to Australia because we've fallen back in love with the country. I think if we'd stayed in Australia for the last 3 years, that we would have been traveling here. Like if we just stayed back in Australia, I don't think that would have happened. We would have continued to get more and more jaded about our situation and more yearn for something outside of what we have. Like I said, the beauty is business as usual. We've been really able to consolidate our finances being and living cheaper here. So we're hitting Australia with a war chest of cash, and it should be a different financial situation for us from when we left, which is really nice as well. So guys, hopefully you stay along for the journey. There's a lot more to come. I've got a lot planned for this channel, and hopefully you hang around for that. But this is Jimmy, and I'll catch you all on the horizon from now on in Australia.